Good morning, everybody. I always like the after lunch nap part. So if anybody's out there sleeping, I have balls of me throwing at you to wake you up. But we'll see how it goes. But before we start, I want to raffle off. We have a thing in our booth. I'm giving away. If I call your name out, just head to the booth after this, and you'll get it. Michael Sharon, it looks like, network analyst. You got a free Metasploit book that I'm going to sign. Joe Ori from, I won't say where you're from, but Metasploit book. Justin Taylor, Metasploit book, and then Ariana Dial won the Amazon Echo. So head by our booth afterwards and come pick it up. So just got back from DerbyCon, which I've been, a lot of us have been planning for a long time. So I've been running on about 30 minutes of sleep for the past week. But I got like 7 hours yesterday, so I actually feel somewhat decent today, except for like my entire body getting destroyed, which I'm finding as I get older, I don't recover as fast, and I can't party as hard as I used to, which really starts to stink. But I definitely got enough adrenaline up here to keep it going. This talk is the first time I've ever given this talk before, and it's a little bit of a different presentation style than I normally do. But I'm going to give it a shot and see how it goes. And the way that I wanted to do this talk is that I see a lot of things happening right now in this industry that are both good and bad. And the good is great. We're doing a lot of awesome things. The industry is expanding. We're becoming, a formalized industry, which we didn't really have 10, 15 years ago. And it's something that is awesome to see, and it's great because we're all part of it. But there's the bad, which is, going into different directions that may lead us astray of what we're actually trying to accomplish, which is really trying to protect assets and really protect businesses. And I see a lot of things happening right now in the industry that will lead us that way, and kind of talking a little bit about that. Just a quick intro of myself. Dave Kennedy. I started a company called TrustedSe and Binary Defense. TrustedSe is a services company that does pen testing, all that good stuff. Binary Defense is an MSSP that looks for hackers and all that good stuff. But I started off my career I started off my career programming video games as a kid. When everybody was going to like football games and stuff like that, I had like no friends programming video games. So that's where I kind of started mine. It was no like graphics. It was like multi-user dimensions and what are called MUDs. Where you type in all that good stuff. That was the fun times. But I got out and I started working for the National Security Agency, more of the marine intelligence side. Marines do have an intelligence wing, which is unusual. But working more on the signals collection, crypto breaking, exploit development, really in the early stages before they really even had what they would consider a red team or offensive capabilities. And I ended up building a multi-million-dollar system that was for more wireless intercept stuff to look at where certain terrorists were at and what they were doing, so that we could find them and kind of bust doors down to go get them. So I spent 2 years in Iraq, once in Bahrain and Afghanistan. So good places to go vacation at. Got out of there and I worked for a consulting shop, kind of learning my ropes in the business side. And I got lucky. I ended up joining a company called Diebold and became their chief security officer. And I ended up running their whole security program. I had a team of about 55 people or so, where I built their information security program really from the ground up. And I came in after the voting machines, just like to throw that out there. I was really way after the voting machines. But helped build a security program, and then I started TrustedSe and Binary Defense. But I've been really fortunate. I've testified in front of Congress twice. That was interesting. I'll never do that again. I'm not a big political guy, but when they start battling back and forth, it's an interesting thing. But I do a lot of the media stuff. I was on Fox and CNN and CNBC and BBC and Anderson Cooper and all those different ones out there. I'm actually going to show you a couple of videos of that. But I get to talk about a little bit of the different topics that are out there and what's kind of happening in the industry. But if you look at right now with what's happening, we see a lot of attacks occurring, right? And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. In fact, it's getting worse. And when I say worse, there's a higher influx of these types of breaches. If you go back 10 or 15 years and you look at the types of breaches that were out there, it was still kind of minute. The types of information that we had out there wasn't specifically sensitive or impactful to the organizations, at least not yet. But now you flash forward and it's a full-fledged business. You have different types of demographics going after companies for a variety of different reasons, to compromise them, to gain intellectual property, to boost their own companies, to boost their own countries, or to do intelligence gain or whatever they're looking for. There's so many different verticals that hackers are going after right now that it's a full-fledged business. There's literally an equivalent to Amazon where, like Amazon, you have a 5-star rating. You actually have hackers you can hire to hack your wife for $50, and then they have 5-star ratings and comics, out there that you can do. It's a whole industry now on hacking. And I would have never thought it would have gone to this, I guess, from when I started in it, but it has. And it's something that we as an industry have to focus on really trying to look at what they're going after and how you defend against it. And if you look at today, we're not really doing that. We've really focused on a large amount of technology to try to augment for the lack of personnel. But what's interesting is that, you look at 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, we really struggled with getting the visibility that we needed for our security programs. I mean, you'd ask for people, you wouldn't get it. You'd ask for funding, you wouldn't get it. And maybe that's still the case today for a lot of folks. But we've never had the visibility that we have today around information security, around the importance of it, because of what's happening out there. People are scared. I mean, you know how many times they get called into a board of directors meetings like, hey, we're really scared about getting breaches. What do we got to do? Board members would never care about what was going on in IT as long as their iPhone worked or whatever. They didn't care about security. They didn't understand security. They just wanted their stuff to work. They wanted it easy, and they wanted it to be able to support the business. And we're seeing that change quite a bit. And so we want everything connected. We want the Internet of Things. We want devices that are out there. We want things that can connect us immediately to information to support our businesses and really start to focus on having information everywhere. And that's great. I mean, technology is awesome, and security should never be a hindrance of technology, period. And that's something I'll kind of hit through all of this. If you look at kind of the DevOps term that's coming out now, right? Kind of that full integration to kind of support agile development and how do you inject security into that. All those pieces are things that we're trying to do because we've always been kind of the roadblock for, organizations. Like, hey, you need to fix this and fix this and fix this and do this and do that and do this before you can even come close to getting into QA or dev, before you can promote into production. Like, all of these things that we tout and we focus on have been roadblocks traditionally, or locking my phones down so that I can barely type a text message. Those are things that we were traditionally known for, and we got a bad reputation for a lot of it. But what was cool is that the popularity around hacking is out there. Everybody know what that is from? We're all in the security field. We should know what this is. This is from Mr. Robot. If you're not familiar with Mr. Robot, it's a show on USA. It's about hackers, and it's probably one of the more accurate portrayals of hackers that there is out there. In fact, they use technical savvy stuff for the show. In fact, I think it was episode 5. One of the guys, the main hacker dude, was hacking into what they called Steel Mountain. Hacking into Steel Mountain, and he starts using a tool to social engineer a lady that was trying to get access, that they're trying to get around to get access into this facility. And they actually use my tool, the social engineer toolkit. So they're actually hacking away, inside the show using the social engineer toolkit to get access to a place, which was really neat. But that's the type of perception. And now there's actually shows that are portraying what's actually out there now. The popularity around hackers has never been so great. We need to capitalize on that. If you look at the demographics of the types of hackers that are out there, we have so many different types of threats around hackers. We have, the organized crime. Organized crime is really on the monetary side, right? So credit cards and PII and all that other good stuff. You've seen a lot of breaches occur on the medical front, medical insurance specifically, around records like social security numbers. We had the government get breached, OPM specifically, around personal information. There's a huge intelligence aspect going on right now around getting PII, and there's actually 2 markets for that. You have, the organized crime where, PII is less valuable, I suppose. It's actually gone up a little bit since credit cards, a little bit harder to get in the bulk market and the Carter infrastructure. But, the PII stuff has actually shot up about $3 per record or something like that, I think is what it's currently at. But that's less of a concern for the organized crime pieces, and more so on the intelligence gathering side for different countries, and most specifically China, which is one of the more overt ones that we have out there right now. But you look at that, and they're going after a lot of information around intelligence. Who currently goes there, salary information, medical information. What they can possibly do to use that to market that back to potentially DoD contractors or people that are working in the intelligence space. So you have a whole different demographic around PII, but then you have the Carter market, which is around credit cards, and it's actually gotten a lot harder. If you don't know, it's a lot harder to get access to the bulk amount of credit cards. Doesn't mean it doesn't still happen, but they're doing a lot better on the encryption front, which makes it a lot more difficult to actually go and sell those in bulk quantities. So you have that side, which is more of the organized crime piece, and that's purely profit. You have the state sponsor, which is more military preparedness, intelligence gaining purposes, bolstering their own economy that may be flailing a bit or trying to get ahead. It's awesome to hack a company here in the United States, steal their intellectual property, and then build the exact same product and then sell it here in the United States for half the cost. It's like the most brilliant marketing thing that you could ever possibly do from a business perspective. It'd be like calling up the NSA and saying, hey, I need you to hack into this company in China and give me all their data so that I can start a competing company in their own infrastructure. It's a weird concept to kind of think of, but kind of how it works. So you have that demographic, and obviously from a preparedness perspective, I mean, I would say, China and Russia are probably, in the United States are probably the three best out there right now. Iran's getting a lot better. They're still kind of in the childish stages of going after things and downing things and doing more of those types of attacks, but they're definitely getting better. They have some really sharp people over there, focusing on their information warfare capabilities. North Korea is grade D, and yet they're able to breach Sony apparently and get into everything, which is an interesting one. So, you have D and F players that are able to rip into almost any infrastructure here in the United States and take them over, which is kind of how we're at. And so you have the ability right now to weaponize our information. And you have the ability to do attacks against information in a way that we've never seen before. And that's why businesses freak out, because all of our information, things that we do, rely off of that communication path, rely off of the source code they're developing, relying off of the manufacturing process, the systems that use that, or support medical, or whatever it ends up being, to protect what we're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. And if you can weaponize that in a way to cause a breach, a mass amount of information being lost, panic or mayhem, you can really start to cause major issues and disruptions in a lot of areas. There was one of the cyber warfare directors for Cyber Command. His name's escaping me right now. I'm trying to think of his name real quick. Anyways, I'll come back to me in a second. But he said that he's seeing the highest level of elevated attacks that he's seen against our critical infrastructure around energy, around medical research, around a lot of different areas where if they wanted to, they could literally shut down large percentages of what we're doing out there. And that sucks, but they don't want to do that. Right now, there's no reason for them to do that. But if we have a major conflict with another country, you better believe that we're going to be doing the same thing that they're going to be doing to us, and we're going to have a lot of those things happening. So, we have the ability to weaponize a lot of the data and go after things. And so, what we tried to do to accommodate what we're seeing in the kind of the trends, the security industry really tried to build a castle. They went back to the old school, mentality of building a logical castle from the physical realm. You had a perimeter, your firewalls, right? And you had a moat around that, your DMZ infrastructure, or, what you have inside of there. You have this whole infrastructure set up to try to protect hackers. And you have archers, which is your intrusion prevention systems. And, once you're on the inside, ways of trying to monitor things. We really built up this castle mentality of trying to protect, our information. And then, we start getting all these movements, like the cloud and IoT and everything else. And really, our perimeter just died. It's gone, right? We don't have a perimeter anymore. Our information is in third-party cloud services. Our information is at the users. I mean, the fact that I can call up somebody or send them an email and they click a link, and then you just let me through the front gates, is perfectly great for me, right? It's the M&M syndrome, hard on the outside, soft on the outside, right? Soft on the inside. But if I got a direct conduit into the soft inside, that's a problem. And that's where we're at. I mean, one person can literally take down an entire organization. One application, one device can take down an entire organization. And that's a pretty bad position to be at from a defensive strategy side. And, on top of it, does anybody here have enough funding for security? Does anybody have enough people for security? Same question I ask a lot of times, right? So we're already overloaded in what we're doing as far as our workload. Now we have to be 100% all the time. And we have to say, okay, a person that clicks somewhere in accounting, I have to be able to detect that somehow. But yet I don't have enough funding or people for it. And that's an issue that we have right now in information security. The end users, to me, are some of our biggest threats. I mean, I think we do an okay job at really stopping a lot of the traditional hacks. You look at, early 2000s, mid 2000s, the web application attacks that we were seeing, like SQL injections, things like that. A lot of them have gone down quite a bit. But yet we still have these problems with these breaches because it's easy to impact our users. And that's one of the biggest problems that we face as an industry. I mean, if you look at the breaches, they're coming from the users. A large percentage of them. Look at the Verizon data breach report. Majority of them came from users. And that's a problem that we have to focus on and fix. I'm going to show you a video, and if you've already seen it, I apologize. But this is when I was on the Katie Couric show, because it's a good example of this. And I was on the Katie Couric show, and by the way, I've lost a lot of weight since then, so that's Big Dave, I'm Little Dave. Yeah, I was a bear then. I used to like to hug people. I still like to hug people, but when I did the show, it was interesting because Katie's producers called me up and they're like, "Hey, we want you to live hack somebody on stage." I'm like, "All right, that's fine. I can do that." But I'm like, just so I need permission. I need to let her know what I'm doing and what I'm gonna actually do when I do this, just ahead of time. And she's like, "Well, you can't just do it, beforehand and then let her know afterwards." I'm like, "No. I like not being in prison, right? And so she's like, "Okay, cool." So we let her know ahead of time what we're gonna do. So what's interesting about this is it's much easier to hack a corporation than it is an individual person. Because I can blanket things and make it come from behalf of the company, and they're like, oh, this is just normal business, and I just click this and do whatever. But a person, I actually have to do something that relates to them. So I have to do reconnaissance. I have to look at what they do. I have to look at their social media. I have to look at what they buy, their spending habits, who they communicate with, their friends. And I didn't have a lot of time for this. So literally I spent like 15 minutes doing my reconnaissance on her before I went to hack her. And you'll see what happened here in just a second. And hopefully this works. I'm going to put the microphone down because we don't have any sound audio in here. I'm going to try to play it off of this. Can you hear that? All right, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second here. I can actually do something even better. Make sure my Bluetooth is on. And it is. Hang on. Aha. And I can put this up to here.
Speaker is on.
And it'll connect here in a second.
Connected.
Huh. Technology, it works.
Who lives in Connecticut. Stephanie, I understand that you believe your computer is unhackable. Why?
I'm something that's really on my mind. I'm very concerned about it. I feel like all of my antivirus software is up to date. I've taken a lot of precautions. I have a computer consultant who comes into my home to check on these things. And so I really feel strongly that we've done everything possible to protect myself and my daughters. I mean, it's something that's really worrisome for me.
Well, that's very impressive because you seem like you're extremely ahead of the curve. So we decided to put David to the test to see if your comfort level with your security is actually warranted. Tell us what happened. How did you do when we gave you the challenge of...
I was like pausing it right there because, obviously I feel pretty confident at this point, right? I know that things are going to go pretty good for me right at this point, so. Oh, I just said next. Okay, hang on a second.
Right. That's good. So we decided, with your security, right, we gave you the challenge of hacking into Stephanie's computer.
So, Stephanie, I would say, was actually one of the top 5% of what I would say is being most secure. Everything up to date, really locked down, all of those good things. And so I literally had opened my computer up, and in less than 10 minutes or so, I had a fully designed website that looked real in every way and shape or form of a website that you would visit every single day. And I sent an email out, and as soon as I sent the email out, it looks very believable in every way. She clicked the link, and then from there, again, less than 10 minutes of setup time and hacking and all that stuff, I had full access to her computer, her webcam, got around all of her antivirus, everything completely.
Wow.
Oh, it gets worse.
Tell us, oh my gosh, that you were able to see.
Well, the first thing we did is we enabled her webcam, and we were actually able to monitor everything that was going on in her house, everything from her daughter working on her computer to Stephanie actually walking through the house itself. We actually enabled the audio as well, so we could actually hear everything that was going on at the same time. I was able to listen to conversations.
I'll just let it go there. I feel bad, but obviously, a really quick way of getting into her computer. This one specifically, I'm trying to remember. I think it was noticed that she did some shopping on Amazon, so I sent her a quick reroute issue that there's a package that had been rerouted through Amazon. You need to click this in order to get it resent to your house or whatever, and she clicked the link and it's compromised or whatever. But it's easy to go after one individual based on certain things that that they do. And that's the problem we have defensively is how do you stop the user population? And I hate the discussion that, users are dumb or whenever I see the shirt, there's no patch for human stupidity. I really dislike that shirt, because it's like, one of my good friends, Chris Nickerson, was actually just at DerbyCon talking about this. And I'm not going to use his same analogy because it's not appropriate for an audience. But I'll use the PC version of what he was saying in order to try to interpret this a little bit. And it's going to be weird for me to, but would you yell at your son for not doing something appropriately that they haven't been taught before? Or, a kid that they wouldn't be taught for? I'm not saying that other people are kids, but they haven't been taught. And so you can't expect people that haven't been taught or communicated to understand what you do and understand what you're doing with technology and to be good at it. It'd be like me saying, hey, I'm an expert in sales and accounting. No, I have no idea how to do accounting. No idea. As a business owner, it's probably not the best thing. But I have no idea what to do with accounting, right? I don't know anything about manufacturing products. I know nothing about designing and building hardware specifications. I have no idea what it takes to have a manufacturing company to operate those. Does that make me stupid as a person, or there's no patch for human stupidity? No, it's not what I do. But I know basic functions. Like I know when I come into a company that there's certain behaviors and expectations that I have to do as far as HR, because I go through the onboarding process with HR. I know how to submit expenses. I know how to do basic operations. That's the same thing we need to get down to that level with humans. We need to focus on teaching them things that are basic so that they can at least give us an understanding. I'd rather have, so let's just say in a 20,000 person company, I'd rather have 20,000 basic sensors than buying a piece of technology that's supposed to detect it for me. And so if you can get to the user level piece, period, it does so much. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So right now we're into easy hacking. I mean, hacking is one of those things that is easy for us. I mean, for Sony, I don't know if you look at the Sony breach. That was like grade F hacking. Like as basic as it gets. Like literally they took like a 1980s, they took the movie that just had a 20-year anniversary, they took hackers and like basically used that same level of skill from like the 1990s in order to break into Sony. And the malware that they used was the most disgusting malware that I've ever seen. Like I'm a bad programmer and I laughed at that code. Right? You know, my code that I write for the social engineering toolkit, it's all hack jobs. That was beyond hack jobs, right? It was like 7 different, binary droppers and a bunch of other crud that were just, using a combination of commercial product lines and other things. It was terrible. Yet they caused a catastrophic event on a company, and yet that's where we're at as an industry. And I'm not making fun of Sony. It could happen to any of us. Like, I love in the industry that we point fingers like, oh man, Sony got breached, you guys suck, or Target or whatever. It could have happened to any of us. We're secretly sitting like, oh man, thank God it didn't happen to us because that would have been my job. It could happen to any of us at any time, and that's the problem we face right now. If you look at 99% of the users, it's because we open the front door. Our users are a direct conduit into the rest of the infrastructure. And it doesn't mean that there is anything better than what we're doing. I mean, the way that we've designed our infrastructure would take a very big impact to our business to really fix the root causes of those. And so what we do is we go and we build cybersecurity teams, right? And the cybersecurity teams are folks that are supposed to be, the way to look at what's happening and secure our infrastructure. Yet, we're in meetings, we're fighting fires, we're dealing with the business. We got PCI and IT general controls, and we have HIPAA, and we have all this other stuff. So now we're bogged down on the compliance front on top of everything else that we have. And then, there's 600 IT people to maybe our half a person dedicated to security. There's no way for that to work. It's not possible. And it's interesting because if you look at the security people that are in industry, we're always stressed out. We're putting in mad amount of hours. We're trying to compensate for that lack, when really what the business needs to focus on is hiring more people. And more people will fix the problem. Granted, they're good people. You want good people to help fix the problem, but more people will fix the problem, not an appliance or something that's going to automatically fix it for you. And so we build these cybersecurity teams. And in infancy stages, we were roadblocks. I talked about that before. We were roadblocks. We're like, hey, you can't do that. Well, I have to get this out now because I have these deadlines. Well, you can't do it from a security perspective. Well, I'm going to do it anyway because I've been doing this for the past 15 years, and this is going to take me 6 months to address with the current staffing that I have. So I'm just going to do it anyway and see what happens. And so we became kind of the draconian joke of the whole, infrastructure because of this type of mentality. And what's interesting is that we needed to kind of do that a little bit because we've been kind of crying wolf, like, hey, this is going to happen, guys. It's going to be really bad out here in a little while. There's going to be breaches and stuff like that. And everyone's like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like boom, 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 boom. And there's this all out, breaches happening. And we're like, oh man, they're really serious. Now we need to do something. Well, we have an opportunity to do that, but we have to change how we do things. I never thought that we'd get to a point to where you'd see entire companies just like fall over and collapse. Granted, Sony's recovering, but the entire company was shut down. Like they destroyed their exchange servers. Like the exchange servers were dead, right? You have other companies that experience breaches. There's a number of them that were just mentioned a couple of days ago that just go and they get destroyed from the inside out. And so it's a whole cataclysmic effect around the types of attacks that you see out there versus what's going to happen in the future. And look at this room right here. It's a good gauge to see where hackers are going to be in the future. Because if there's less and less InfoSec people, that means that there's less and less hackers out there breaching. They're not as successful. Does anybody know the amount of change that DEF CON has gone over in the past 10 years? If there's 25,000 people that go there, is that a good indication that there's probably a lot more hackers out there now too? Right? So this industry is going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to see a lot of breaches out here. Now here's a bit I did recently on Fox News. I just want to show it to you really quick too, around specific breaches. Now, by the way, if you don't like Fox, I understand. I'm not a political guy. I do them all. So I do CNN. You know, I think what CNBC is like supposed to be like really like liberal or something, and then Fox is like really Republican or something like that. Whatever. I do them all, so I don't care. I don't even follow politics. I'm scared about both elections this year, so we'll see.
So the cybersecurity analyst David Kennedy on why all of us really need to start worrying. I guess if the IRS is vulnerable, then we're all vulnerable, right, David?
That's right, Charles. I mean, right now the federal government has a major undertaking because all their systems are now vulnerable. You saw the Office of Personnel Management or the OPM Act. Millions of records around background checks and clearances were taken. IRS, time and time after again, where we're seeing a lot of these large-scale breaches. The federal government way behind even the commercial sector, which is also getting breached really bad right now when it comes to the types of attacks.
Now, when you hear that these attackers used an application that was provided by their IRS, I guess that's what really is unnerving because, before we heard they make sure you have a secure password, but any business out there is going to have offers, apps, security, different things to invite people into their site so they can accumulate data on it, but it becomes a two-way street.
It does, and that's what happened here in the IRS. They're able to use, personal information from individuals that they get from other places. Like, for example, what's your first pet's name? In order to guess and pull back information or birth dates, things like that are readily available to get that information. The problem is that look at that statistically. They went for 600,000 accounts. They were successful in half of those. That's a very, very alarming statistic, which means that they were easily guessable, and they had little to no security, and that they're able to essentially force their way into these types of systems.
So you look at those breaches, most specifically around the IRS and what we're seeing a lot of those from. I mean, it's just still the basic concepts of what we see falling out there. Weak passwords, personnel attacks. And so when you see those types of breaches, what is our reaction in the industry to do? What do we do when we see a major breach? We freak out, right? Like everything happens, especially if it's in the same industry vertical or they're competitors of ours. We freak out like crazy, right? Because we have everybody coming to us like, hey, are we going to be the next one? Are we going to be hacked? Are we going to do this? What are we going to do to stop it? And so we get the attention that we never had before in the past. And so what we do is like, well, we have neglected security, and this isn't our fault in security, I'm not saying this anyway, but we've neglected security for the past 10 years because we haven't had the funding and the support that we've always had, and we haven't architected our networks from the type of ways that we should have. And so what we do is we go and we're like, oh, well, we have 10 years of demons in our pockets here. We can't fix this today or tomorrow. It's just going to be a long road for us to do. We're going to try to skip a couple steps and buy a bunch of technology, right? And what's interesting is that if you look at what you currently have, let's just say you have an ASA, right? But you want to get, a next-gen firewall, so you decide to go Palo Altos. Or let's just say, you decide you need to get some APT detection software that's going to stop, the threats. So now you're introducing a new piece of technology into your environment, right? Now, my question to you is, were your current folks already overloaded? Yeah. And then you add technology on top of that? Yeah. And there's no expertise in that technology yet because it's new technology, right? And yet, you still want that to be successful somehow? So we buy technology to fix the issues of the lack of people, but yet we need people to operate those pieces of technology. And the pieces that are using technology are still comfortable with those. And my favorite ones are the next-gen firewall stuff. Like, we have this ASA here. It's been there for it used to be a PIX. Now it's an ASA. It's been there for 15 years. We love this thing, but we're going to get a next-gen firewall because we want to stop APTs or whatever. So we go and we buy a Palo Alto, right? And Palo Altos are great. Technology is great if you already have something established. But then we just use their custom importer rule that they have to import all the rules from the ASA into the Palo Altos and taking all the 10 and 15 years of bad practices and just plopping them in somewhere that you hope now is going to be better. That's insane. So now we just took all the stuff that we've done for 15 years that were terrible and then moved it into this one firewall because we think it's going to be better now. And someone's going to magically appear and be good. For us hackers, bypassing things are pretty easy. Palo Altos are very easy. Don't get me wrong, if you set them up right and you do proper segmentation, they're a great addition for detection, they're a great addition for prevention. But they're easy to get around. Technology is easy to get around. My favorites are the sandboxing technologies. What they'll do is they'll take a piece of malware, and it's not all of them, some of them are actually pretty decent. But what it'll do is it'll actually take a piece of malware sample, right? And it'll take a look at it and say, okay, this piece of software is communicating to a command and control, or it's hooking into the registry infrastructure. It's doing something that's causing this to be potentially malicious. And so, the concept behind this was, if I send an email, if I go to a website and they're trying to download something that's a known pattern of an attack, let's analyze it to look at the behavior of it to see if it does anything malicious, right? Well, that's great and that's a good concept, and I agree with that concept. However, the way that they do that, hackers are always figure out ways of bypassing it. And to bypass virtualization technology is probably one of the easier ones. In fact, it's probably easier than antivirus itself, which is like really, really easy. I don't know. It's like you can do almost anything in bypass antivirus. But here's how to bypass the sandbox technology. And it's 3 lines. That's actually like 2 lines of code. But what you do is you take whatever code that you want to execute. Let's just say it's a backdoor or a C2 infrastructure or something like that. And you look at what you're targeting. Let's just say you're targeting a specific piece of technology that looks for malicious software via email. In your code that you write, it says, okay, well, if I'm in the sandbox environment, and these sandbox environments are very, very easy to predict. Like usually a lot of times they're using 1 CPU core or certain specific memory requirements that are very subpar to what you would have in a normal environment. And to be honest with you, I would rather not hack on a computer that had less than 2 CPU cores, because that's going to slow my hacking down a little bit. So even if it doesn't run on someone that has 1 CPU core, that's fine. I don't want to hack them anyway. I'll just wait till somebody else opens it up. But most of these have 1 CPU core or like 512 megs of RAM, or maybe not even that. And they virtualize and they say, okay, go ahead and run this code and see if it does anything. Well, my code just says, hey, if I'm running in less than 2 CPU cores, then don't do anything, just exit. And it says, oh, okay, so it goes into this virtual machine environment. It pops up and it says, hey, are you going to do anything? Nope. Nada. Oh, you're not malicious. Go ahead, you're fine. Then it passes it off to the next one. Now, the reason why this is public now, we've been using this for years. The reason why it's public now is it's in the direworm now. If you're familiar with that, it's more of a banking Trojan. They actually coded these detection checks for most of the sandbox environments so that it could escape most of those. It's in a mass propagating worm now. So, all this now is public and hackers use it to get around most of this stuff. Interesting. So for me, the focus was always on the behavior of things, which is where I think we need to move to. But literally what we try to do is just front a bunch of money for technology. And we got this money, we got this funding, but yet we didn't have the program to develop it. And it's hard for us because we can be like, listen, I've been telling you for 5 years that our security isn't where we need to be. And I've been in these meetings and I've been to all these things and I've been telling you this for years. And I know you want something today, but it's going to take me at least 3 to 5 years to build something right. And in the meantime, I can try to put some plugs in the sinking ship, or you can invest heavy in the people, and I can build it hopefully quicker. And those are the conversations that we really haven't had in this industry. And the reason I say we haven't had it is because I go into a lot of companies that are very similar, and I run into a lot of companies that aren't, that have a successful security program. That's great. More power to you. We're getting there. But a lot of ones we go to, they try to throw money at a problem that is a people problem. And that's getting the right people, understanding that, and then really focusing on those people. So if you keep throwing money into things, and you introduce more complexity into the environment, and then you see more breaches, and then you spend more money, buy different technology, introduce more complexity, and then more breaches happen, and then you do the same thing over and over again. Does anybody know what that is? Absolutely, right? So we in the security industry are insane. Congratulations, no straitjackets at least yet. But we're doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. And I understand that we're overloaded. I understand that we're really drinking through a fire hose. That's definitely something that we're doing as an industry. But we have to change what we're doing as a perspective. Now, what I love about where we're at is, if I look back 5 years or 6 years from now, we have a lot of positives. I like Michael Jordan as a quote. He said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games, 26 times. I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." And as an industry, we will do the same. We're going to lose a lot. We're going to have a lot of breaches. We're going to have a lot of issues, but we're going to hopefully find our way to do that. And that all starts with making changes. When I first started at Diebold as a chief security officer, the first thing that I was told was I had to be part of all these meetings, and to me, these meetings were irrelevant. And that's a horrible thing to say. I mean, meetings aren't irrelevant. Dealing with people in the business is irrelevant. For me, my number one priority was winning the people over in the entire company about what I was doing around information security. And that was making that change. So the first thing I did was not implement a piece of technology. It wasn't going and spending money. It was making relationships with IT. It was making relationships with people, explaining to them what I was doing. I mean, I almost, I literally, whenever I needed something done with IT, I would literally buy them, a whole bunch of pizza and beer, And thank you so much for your help. I can't thank you enough. And that was to the people that were, the most junior of network engineers all the way up to, a VP of the individual environments. I mean, I tried to be and focus on that relation aspect first and incorporate that change. Know that technology can help augment skills individually. However, it cannot replace a skilled individual. And for me, if you look at that, you can use technology in a way that can help promote information security in your company. There's no question about it. If you need DLP, that's great. That's fine. If you already have an information classification program, if you already know where your data is at and you want to protect that data, DLP makes perfect sense. Does anybody take the time to set up an information classification program that spans your entire business, looks at your business processes, and looks at where that data actually resides at, and you have data stewards in charge of that data, and you focus on it? No. It's too much work. If you had that in place, DLP makes perfect sense. Otherwise, it's a overglorified, regex for looking for credit card data and social security numbers. And maybe every once in a while you have a business process that someone threw in there at one point in time that looks for something. But it doesn't make any sense to buy that technology until you have a program established. Or maybe you augment it. Let's just say application security. You want to grow your AppSec group into a very large process, but you don't have enough right now to do it. But you get a source code analyzer and you give those to the developers for DevOps to help them out. Makes sense. But with that goal of building that application security program long term is more important. For me, it's all about hiring the right talents and the people. If you notice that the theme of my talks are around the people themselves. If you don't have the right talent in place, you're not going to be successful. You have to have people to be able to rely off of, people to talk to, people that know what they're doing in order to do something. And we do face a major talent gap in this industry. What happened is the security industry went from 0 to 9,000 miles an hour. And so you had folks that were kind of in the forefront of a lot of this, the early stages of the information security field. And then we went to 9,000 miles an hour, and there's this gap in the middle of folks that were in between or super advanced or whatever. And so you have a lot of influx of new folks coming into the industry, but we need advanced people right now. And so we're trying to focus on the automation right now to help alleviate some of that, and that's fine. If we can automate some things, that's great, but automation is we have to make sure we have a good balance between automation and not. I mean, vulnerability scanners find maybe 30 to 40% of what we find doing a manual test, maybe. If you've done source code analysis with an automated tool, it's maybe 15 to 20%. So automation can help alleviate some of that stress, but it has to be built on a framework around talent. And so you have to find them. We have to train our folks good. I mean, we were talking, I was talking at DerbyCon to one of the folks that manages and runs DEF CON. And he was talking about how he was trying to entertain kids coming up in the industry around, graphical interfaces that they can learn to protect things and make it more of a game. And that's fun and exciting. And we talked about that, and he's like, the one thing that scares me, I'm like, don't even say it, the same thing scares me too. No one knows how that game was built underneath it. The command line interface, the ports and protocols, what actually occurs there. If you go to any academia type schools today, they don't teach a lot of the basics that made security successful. And I'm not saying that evolution is something great, but if you don't have anybody that knows what TCP/IP is, or the OSI model, or basics around attacks, or understanding tools and technology in the command line interfaces and programming, that's a big deficit that we're going to face in the long term. So we have to get there too. So having the talent is really important. There's a lot of good things out there you can do to do it. There's also the ability to augment external as well, internal versus external. Personally, I heavily recommend building your team internal. People don't like that because you have to maintain talent pool. It's hard because this industry is so big or getting to be so big right now that you train somebody up over the span of 3 years and they leave for a six-figure job 3 years from now. That's a big problem you have. But if you build the right things in place, you can have a successful internal team. And the internal team knows more about your environment than anybody from the outside ever could. When I come in to do an assessment, I try to understand what I'm attacking in the business and what it is, but I don't know nearly as much as you would that you've been there every single day. It's much better to build inside than it is outside personally. But you can augment from the outside. Augmenting with assessment work to understand where exposures are at, or augmenting from a source code analysis perspective on the DevOps side or application security. there are ways of doing external collaborations and things that you can do to help your program and leverage that until you can build your own inside. A very common thing that I recommend for our customers is like, listen, let's start off with this to get you going, but I want you to build your own team. I want to train your own team to be awesome so that you can have your own team that does better than us. And that should be your goal too if you're using someone on the outside. Certifications are interesting. I have a whole bunch of them. I have a laundry list of certifications. I think I have like 15 different certs. Certs are something that at least can show a little bit of baseline, but I mean, usually there are, you hear the mile wide and an inch deep. They're usually really something that's pretty basic in order to accomplish. But one of the big ones that I really recommend from a technical perspective is a lot of the courses that let you focus on hands-on. They actually have to apply what you know in order to do it. And there's a few I can talk to you afterwards about those, but there's some great certs out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be certified. And now, this isn't a plug for DerbyCon, but conferences are a talk. And what you're doing here and getting knowledge and learning from folks is important, and understanding what's happening in this space is very important. So going to conferences is one of those things that I think are very beneficial. And not necessarily, the talk pieces are perfect. I'm glad you're all here listening to me talk right now. But having the people aspects to understand what your peers are doing, what they're struggling with is equally important. So conferences that focus on that are super great. And having the skills internally. And what I mean by that is, before you go and buy a piece of technology, understanding what the technology can do for you and designing it in a way that enhances your security. If you're going with a next-gen firewall, redesign your entire network infrastructure. Yeah, it's painful. It's going to suck. But at the same time, should accounting be able to get to R&D secrets? Should sales need to be able to communicate with IT assets on different ports that no one knows about? We have wide open networks where as soon as one person's compromised, it exposes everybody. If we just did network segmentation just as a principle alone, that only principle itself, almost all of the things would be significantly more difficult for me to do as a hacker. If I pop sales and I can only get to HTTP and HTTPS websites on the internal network, do you know how much that limits me to attack the rest of the organization? Significantly. Just network segmentation alone is a basic concept. That requires skill of designing things and having the right people in place to actually go and do that. Now, detection is one of those things that I can't stress enough. We've come to the point now where we realize that we cannot stop every single attack. That we have to be right 100% of the time is not going to be accurate, but we still have to be able to detect it, and hopefully soon. And if you look at most of the breaches, how long does it take for that to actually occur? 3 months, 6 months, a year, sometimes longer, or not at all, right? That's a long time to have maintained access into an environment to compromise things. And so if you look at the detection pieces of what we're focusing on, the traditional SIMs are dying off. I won't ask the question here, but having a conglomerate, massive database of information getting sent to you is great for visibility, but none of us know what to look for. So we have these massive SIMs in place that send alerts and logs and these things about account lockouts and all this other stuff that doesn't make a difference. And yet we don't understand how the attackers breach. There's known patterns. There's things that you could look for all the time about that we do as hackers all the time. But yet we don't have that collaboration between the red and the blue. And we just put all this information and slam it into a massive infrastructure and hope that whatever's predefined in ArcSight or whatever it ends up being just flags us an alert of a hacker out there. It doesn't work that way. But as an attacker, one thing I do all the time is I compromise one machine. And I'm like, okay, is there anything cool in here? Not really. I need to move somewhere else to get the data I want, right? So lateral movement. Me going in from one system and attacking other systems and looking for the data that I need access to. That's a known pattern. That is a very specific behavior that I'm going to do as a hacker. Persistence. Maintaining access to an infrastructure. That is a very well-known method of a hack. Pass the hash. Been being done for years and years and years. Very well-known pattern of attack. There's things that you can look for in your detection capabilities that you have the information for right now, right this instant. I don't know if you know this, but WMI is friggin' powerful. If you don't know WMI, you need to learn it as an organization. You need to focus on it because that is one of the biggest things that you can do to get information to you and parse through a lot of data and look for those indicators. There's one that I use all the time. It's WMI logged on user, which will let you know anytime a user logs in to an infrastructure. That's great information that I want to know. If I see any behavior out of that, that's a known entity, that's an anomaly. There's a lot of things that you can do to focus and home in on that data to say, okay, I don't care about the rest of the noise. I have to do this for PCI, but the rest of this is what I'm going to focus on as attackers and getting those capabilities. And the way that you can get better at the monitoring capabilities, by the way, is by understanding more of the offense. Good defense is understanding the offense. A good offense is understanding the defense. And if you focus on understanding the offense, like, for example, I'm sure everybody here gets a pen test done every year. I'm sure you may have internal pen testers, or maybe folks that focus on that. Have them pair up with the blue team. Focus on what you see and what you don't see. I mean, it's very common for us to sit with the blue team or folks within the company themselves and show them exactly what they're doing, and then focus on their side and say, what are you seeing, what are you not seeing? All right, well, here's what you do. And it's good for us too, because I learned so much on the defensive side. Like, hey, that's awesome. That actually stopped me right there, and that's sweet. I've never seen that before. Like, I learned how to, one of the main attack methods now is what we call PowerShell injection. It's a way of, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, it's phenomenal. It's great for IT. It's also great for hacking. And PowerShell, you can do memory injection directly into memory and never touch disk, and you can use PowerShell for that. And nothing picks that up. Antivirus, whatever you have, usually it won't pick up those types of attacks. So there's ways of getting around that. One of them is normal users, if you've already done good segmentation of your users, like admin rights versus non-admin rights, if you have folks that are non-admins, do they ever need to be running PowerShell? No. Right? In Windows, you have group policy settings, and you have something called software restriction policies or App Locker. Within App Locker, you can disallow regular users from executing PowerShell, which means that now you've completely mitigated a normal user attack on PowerShell injection, which negates a huge attack vector, by the way, which, I mean, if you don't know, most folks are moving off of PE droppers, traditional executables, and they're moving more towards more memory-invasive type attacks, so PowerShell injection, those types of techniques. So if you can get around those, that works really well. But the detection piece I can't harp on enough. We have to focus on what the attackers are doing out there in order to actually go and stop it. One of my favorite books is called Rework, which is a book that I read like once a month, just to kind of remind me who I am. And it's like the exact opposite of what we're taught in traditional culture. And it's, focus on things that are important, hold meetings, but only have the people that can make decisions in those meetings, and do a standing room only, and do like a 6-minute meeting to get it done and figure it out and then move on. We get into firefight mode where the day-to-day really bogs us down and what we can actually do to secure a company. And we don't have enough people or time to do it. We need to focus on what's tangible. I really focus on the rework mentality of everything. That's one of the books that I highly recommend. So if you haven't checked it out, I kind of live by that one, which is kind of neat. Last but not least, we have to change. As a person, as an industry, we have to do things a bit different. And we are getting there. I mean, we're seeing a lot of focus now, less on the technology piece and more on the people piece, which is awesome. We didn't have the people to do that. We're getting there now. We still have a long ways to go, but we have to realize that the people are really what's going to make the difference, not the pieces of technology. You cannot automate a person. You can't automate a hacker. There might be tools out there to help augment, but we're not at the point yet where we've hit Skynet. At least not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure the government has something, but we haven't hit that point yet. So until something like that happens, we have to focus on the people. We have to focus on the change. Does anybody have any questions? Questions? All right, well, thank you for having me on here. It was a pleasure.